determined to rejoice and be glad in it. The Bible declares, "Oh, taste and see. The Lord our God is good. His mercy endureth to our generations." How many of you can testify that the Lord's been good to you today? He's been good today, not just yesterday, not just last week, not just the week before. But the Lord has been faithful to you. And so we gather to honor him, gather to let God know we appreciate his goodness and his mercy in our lives. We're moving into the third week of the Lenten season. It's Women's History Month. There's so much to dialogue, to discuss, to share about how God is just gracing us with insight, inspiration, information as we run this race for him. I pray that you are doing well in your prayer and fasting in this season. Let me say that once again. I got one clap. So does that mean, let me try it again. I pray that you all are doing well in your prayer and your fasting in this season. But the Lord is reminding us just to trust him and to believe in his will and his word. Let me share a few quick reminders with you before we dive into our discussion on this Lord's Day. Don't forget, of course, leadership is this Saturday. I want to remind all of our leaders and ministry workers to meet us at 11 o'clock on Saturday. It is a Zoom meeting, so make sure you get the login information. You're a part of that. Every leader, every ministry worker is asked to be a participant in that. Of course, also on Saturday evening, the young adults are having what they're calling an unplugged worship experience at our Security Boulevard location. Persons 39 and under are encouraged to be a part of that, and then gather again on Sunday morning for what the Lord's going to do in this place. Finally, don't forget our prayer conference on the 18th. I've been encouraging you. Oftentimes we set spiritual goals, things we want to see accomplished in our walk of faith, but then we don't always follow through doing the work. The book of James tells us that faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead, so make sure if you really want to strengthen your prayer life, come be a part of the prayer conference on the 18th. It will shape you, it will challenge you, but also more importantly, it will equip you to ramp up your talk with God. So take advantage of that. Last week we dealt with Hagar and Sarah, some women of influence in the biblical text. This week we're going to dive into another woman who makes major impact. I want to couch her story with this question. If God were to put you in position to speak out for, to stand up for thousands of people, but if you spoke out for them, if you were in that position, and it puts you at risk, you can say something that'll make a difference in the lives of thousands, hundreds of thousands, set the tone for generations to come, but it puts you at risk. What would you do? If you could be a blessing, but yet it may cost you some harm, it may put your reputation at risk, your career, your title at risk. But the flip side, if you said something, you could change the course of life for generations. What would you do? Speak out. I heard one speak out. I heard 100, 150, let me think about it. And that's perhaps that becomes a point of tension for so many persons. The text that we're going to take a look at, Esther, you can turn the book of Esther now. Esther has to make that choice. Am I going to speak out, or am I going to be silent? There's a great line in the 4th chapter of Esther says that perhaps, and Mordecai, we'll talk more about him and her relationship in just a moment. But Mordecai says to Esther, she finds herself with this dilemma. He says, Esther, who knows? Maybe you've come to this position for such a time as this. Maybe the reason that God has placed you in this position in this season is for such a time as this. You're placed upon the earth to hear God's voice and declare what God is saying to you for such a time as this. I want you to ponder that. Has God placed you in position for such a time as this?
For such a time as this, I was placed upon the earth to hear the voice of God and do His will, whatever it is. For such a time as this, for now and all the days He gives, I am here, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this. For such a time as this, I was placed upon the earth to hear the voice of God and do His will, whatever it is. For such a time as this, for now and all the days He gives, I am His, I am His, I am His, for such a time as this. For such a time as this, I was placed upon the earth to hear the voice of God and do His will, whatever it is. For such a time as this, from now and all the days He gives, I am His, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this. Yes, I am here, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this. Yes, I am here, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this. For such a time as this, I am here for such a time as this. I am here for such a time as this. I am here for such a time as this.
Amen. If you had to make a choice between saving you or saving thousands, what's the choice you would make? That's the position that Esther finds herself in. I went back into her story. We look at the tension, the decisions she had to make, and then the context in which she had to make it in. Esther 4 verse 14 says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from someplace else." This is Mordecai talking. He said, if you hold your voice, hold your peace, understand this, God will find a way to protect His people, but If your voice is silent now, will it be forever silenced? Mordecai says, if you remain silent at this time, and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. We know the end of the story. They're saved, they're rescued, but how they get there. Yesterday, let me give you a bit of history. Yesterday, many of you may know this, yesterday was a Jewish holiday. Jewish holiday called Purim, P-U-R-I-M, Purim. What is Purim? Purim commemorates the saving of the Jewish nation at this time of history that Esther finds herself in position. That holiday, Purim, Jewish holiday, is a remembrance of this moment in time. The Jewish people were saved primarily due to the efforts of two persons, Mordecai, and then there's Esther. Now, Mordecai and his brother, who ends up adopting Esther early in life, and Esther, the one who somehow is in position. Now, you have to understand, Esther should not be in position to save anybody because of who she is, because of her nationality. But yet somehow God has her in position to save her people. And she cannot afford to risk her positioning to save herself. Now, again, last week we talked about Hagar and we talked about Sarah. There's so many women in the biblical text who we now know are women of significance, women who made major differences, many who have helped plot the course of not just biblical history, but history in itself. Because biblical history is world history. The Bible says in Acts chapter 2, verse number 17, that in his latter days, God says, I'll pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Now, I share that because we live in a day, we live in a time, we live in a world of male dominance, a male-dominated world. We can deal with that in just a second. Men have assumed many of the most powerful positions in the world. The world that we live in has been dominated by men in power. However, when we gaze through history, although they've not always had titles or the title, women have been just as pivotal, if not more pivotal, and even more qualified than many of their male counterparts. For example, a few years ago, and I'm winding my way into Esther's story. A few years ago, we were in shock, major shock as a nation, when Hillary Clinton lost a presidential election that she should not have lost. She should have won with ease. She's more qualified. She was more prepared. She was more experienced in this arena. But because we live in a society that's been dominated by men, she lost. Fact is, women have always played pivotal roles in the progression of the world. Again, we look at the biblical text, biblical narrative. Where would we be without Ruth the Moabite? Where would we be without Ruth? Where would we be without Rachel, the wife of Jacob? Women who played pivotal roles in saving nations, saving people. Where would we be without Sarah and Hagar? I'll push the button a little bit more. Where would we be without Mary, the mother of Jesus? Where would we be without Mary and Martha, the two sisters in biblical texts, who invite Jesus to their home to eat. And then the woman we're talking about today, Esther. Where would we be without Esther and her understanding of her place in time? Without her understanding how God had positioned her to make major difference. Women are more than persons who bore the sons and daughters of great people. But women have always been used by God to create paths into God's will, God's purpose, God's plan. And so again, last week we looked at Sarah, we looked at Hagar, we looked at their relationship, how the tension between Sarah and Hagar was developed. We looked at their journey, how they become persons whose names must be remembered, whose names must be spoken thousands of years later. We looked at their impact and how God used them. But I want to switch our attention today from Sarah and Hagar to what I believe is another powerful woman in biblical history. Esther chapter 4, verse 14 says, and who knows, and this is Mordecai talking here, we'll dive into Mordecai, who he is in just a moment, and who knows that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. And you can actually put your name in place of Esther's if you wanted to, and who knows if God has not positioned you in your royal position for such a time as this. Is your positioning accidental? Is your positioning divine? Is your positioning you just happen to be in the right place at the right time? Is your position or your positioning all about walking persons into closer to the will of God for them? Are you in the family that you are in by accident? Do you have the children that you have by divine providence? Who knows if you have been brought into the kingdom for such a time as this? Now, a little more history. There are two books. How many books in the Bible are named after women? That was a question. How many books in the Bible are named after women? Okay, there's 66 books in the Bible. There are 2 books in the Bible named after women. Oh, now y'all can say 2. Now y'all can say 2. Okay. One is Ruth. Oh, now y'all know. And the other is Esther. Ruth and Esther. The book of Esther, short book composed of 10 chapters. And we're introduced to its namesake, Esther, in early verses of chapter 2. So diving in, turn the channel, chapter 2. We're about to go there. We're introduced to Esther in chapter 2, the book that goes by her name, after Queen Vashti is defrocked, as my friend would say, as she is defrocked because she refused at a party to put on the royal crown and walk around unclothed. She refused to put on the crown on her head and obey the demands of the king and walk around with just her crown on. She had some dignity, she had some pride. Now, Vashti, who was queen up until this point, is defrocked after she refuses to, I would say, humiliate herself. And so she refuses to. Now, it's also believed that when we look at Esther and history and what brings her to this moment in time, that the book is written by Mordecai, who some say may have been her cousin, but he also adopted her because she was an orphan. We pick up in chapter 2 with the king beginning a search for a new queen. Chapter 2 of Esther, verse number 2, says, "So his young male servant said, 'Let the king begin a search for a beautiful young woman who hasn't yet married. And let the king choose certain people in all the royal provinces to lead the search.' Watch this. 'Have them bring all the beautiful young women together to the fortified part of Susa, to the women's house, to the care of Haggai, the king's eunuch, in charge of the women, so that he might provide beauty treatments for them. Let the young women who please you the most take Vashti's place as king.'" There's so much that can be said about that. I'm going to leave as much of it alone as I can. But notice what he says. "Let the young women who please you the most take Vashti's place as queen." The king, of course, liked the plan. It's a joke, y'all. The king liked the plan, and look at what the text says, and implemented it. Vashti is removed. The search committee established the guidelines as to what type of person will make a good queen. Notice what's interesting. The guidelines that are used to select a new queen. She has to be beautiful. She has to be a virgin. She has to be obedient. Then she has to be willing to go through beauty treatments. I'm just lifting what the biblical text says, and we'll get into details. Notice the interesting selection criteria. She has to be a woman of beauty, a virgin, obedient, and willing to go through. She's already beautiful, but then it says she has to go through a beautification process. It says nothing about her brains or her wisdom. But we'll come to find out, in this case, she has brains and she uses them. She has wisdom and she uses her wisdom. It does not appear that the new queen, based upon this selection criteria, will have to do anything but be beautiful. Now, after the search committee has done its due diligence to replace Vashti, a selection is made, and I'm cutting across the chase real quick. A selection is made, and we find that even though Esther, and this is what you cannot forget, even though Esther is Jewish and she's in the land of Persia, that's who's put out the search committee. That's where the queen resides over. He's the king of Persia. Esther ends up being the one selected by the king. Watch this. Notice the selection criteria. The criteria does not say where she has to come from. It just says she has to be beautiful. So Esther is selected. Mordecai, who has been guiding her life, mentoring her, made sure she was in position. He made sure that she would at least be one of the finalists. When you read chapters 2 and 3, it says that he makes sure she gets the opportunity, and he goes by the palace every day to make sure that things are going well with her. Chapters 2 and 3. Esther is eventually selected as the new queen of Persia, even though she's Jewish. Now that's going to become a problem come chapter 4, when we bump into a eunuch by the name of Haman and his relationship with Mordecai. I'll deal with that in a second, but just to help set you up, Haman gets mad at Mordecai because Mordecai does not obey his commands. Mordecai is also Jewish. Haman is Persian. He convinces the king to put in place a law to punish Jewish persons. I'm going to get to that in just a second. And so Esther is taken to the palace. She becomes the new queen. Look down at verse number 16 or so. She's taken to the king, to his own palace, the 10th month, the 7th year of his rule. And it's verse 17 says, the king loved Esther more than any of the other women. She had won his love and his favor more than all the others. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her ruler in place of Ashtar. I'm just trying to give you context. The king held a magnificent feast, called it the Feast of Esther, for everybody. He declared a public holiday and gave out gifts with royal generosity. Now, and it's important, verse number 19, when they gathered the young women to the second women's house, Mordecai was working for the king at the king's gate. And watch this. Esther still wasn't telling anyone her family background and race, just as Mordecai had ordered her. She continued to do what Mordecai said, just as she did when she was in his care. Now, we're there. And so as chapter 2 is closing, Esther has gone through the process of being selected by the king to become his new queen. Now, what we have to take note of is that Esther becomes queen without the king knowing her history. Now, why would that be important in the weeks, the years, the months to come? That'll become important because some tension is going to rise between the Jewish nation and the people of Persia, whom she is now queen over. Queen, understand this, will have some access to the king. Now, there's a law that says that the queen has to be summoned by the king, but don't forget, he loved Esther more than anybody else. And so could it be said that when the time comes, God will use the king's weakness for Esther to his advantage to save his people? Because the king, he was just concerned about her beauty, and he loved her more than anybody else. And so she's queen now, and no one has asked her where you come from. Who are you? What brings you here? Who are your parents? Nothing, just how beautiful are you? He does not know that she is not Persian. He does not know she's Jewish. He doesn't know anything about her character. There's so much to be said there. Because so often, we get in relationships with people without knowing them. We get excited about looks, their money. You know what I tell persons in pre-marriage counseling now, when they come to me for their final session. Have you done health record? Do you know their health record, their family history? Do you know that anything their family of origin? What's their history? What's their health history? What's their credit history? You got to know people. You just can't marry them. I want to know what kind of debt you have. I want to know your health. I want to know your financial report. Oh yeah, I'm getting there. Oh, I asked them. Do you know their past? Are they a rehabilitated criminal? That's important. You may be rehabilitated, but I still want to know. What brings you here? I'm not going to marry you because you talk well. Our problem is we just happen to have somebody on our arms. Am I making somebody uncomfortable? Now, all of this is important because he knows nothing about Esther except how she looks. I would say something else, but this is church. All he knows. Because, and watch this, because, and chapter 4 helps us, because perhaps she has come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And she'll be in position to save her people from a plan to destroy her people. God will sometimes have you in positions and you don't know why you're there. You won't know why you're there until later. You think you're there just because you interviewed well, because you're smart. No, God positions his people. God knows how to get you through the right door. For what? For the plan. For I know the plans I have for you. You're not going through this to see. So many of us think that we are in position because of who he is. It's not about you all the time. And so many of us make everything about us. The question is, why has God positioned me here? Well, why does God have me here and not someplace else? The question we have to ask often is, God, what are you doing? And how are you positioning me for the plans you have to prosper me, the plans you have to hope me, the plans you have to give me a great future? Esther is in position for such a time. Now, we see this plan unfolding beginning in chapter 2, verse 21. Look at verse 21. She made queen rather, and all of a sudden it says, look at verse 21, at that time. Look at the first two words, the first three words in that verse, at that time. Go back to verse 20 for a second. Can we flip to verse 20? At that time, she's here. At that time, as Mordecai continued to work at the king's gate, two royal eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, became angry with the king. Now watch this. These two eunuchs who are under the king become angry with the king. Watch this. Look what happens. They were among the guards protecting the doorway to the king. You ain't get it. Here persons who are protecting the king's door are angry with him. There's so much there. Got to watch who's watching you. Because some folk who are watching you for the wrong reason. I remember when I first came to Morning Star, I've told this story before, one of our seasoned members, well, I ain't gonna say seasoned, I'm gonna just say a member, said to me, you know, you that preaching, teaching stuff, you do that, you all right with that stuff, but I'm watching you. I'm watching to see so I can find out your flaws. Some people watch, that's a true story. When we were on Winners Lane, my first few years here, a member said that to me. You can preach and teach and all that, but I'm watching to find out your flaws. Watch who's watching you. Watch who's in your inner circle. Because everybody in your inner circle ain't there for the right reason. They were protecting the doorway to the king, but watch the next line. But they were secretly planning to kill him. Watch this. Some folk aren't there to kill you physically. They're there to kill you spiritually. They're there to kill your plans, your vision. Watch the folk who always somehow end up around others who are trying to sabotage you. Watch, you know how you can learn people real well? Can I give you a secret? Can I give y'all a secret? Cheese. Should I tell y'all a secret? Y'all ain't... Here's how you find out who's who. Watch who comes to funerals and weddings. I'm giving you that one for free. You want to know who somebody is? Watch who comes to a funeral of a person, and watch and who's in that circle, and then watch who comes to the wedding. That's how you find out who's who. Watch who comes to funerals. Watch who comes to a wedding. That's how you find out who's who. Trust me on that one. They secretly planned to kill him. When Mordecai got wind of it, here's what happens. He reported to Queen Esther. Where's Esther now? She's queen. She spoke to the king about it, saying the information came from Mordecai. But get this. She says, Mordecai shared with me what those who are watching you are doing. The matter was investigated and found to be true. And so the two men were impaled on pointed poles. They were killed. A report about the event was written in the royal record with the king present. Now, what did this do? What did this do for Mordecai? What did this do for Esther? It created trust of her from the king that she would need in due season. God will, watch this, create opportunities for you to gain favor with the right people. Favor that will be used in the right season. She brings to king, hey man, hey king, this is what's going on. Two of your boys, no, those who you think are your boys, are planning to kill you. But Mordecai, my mentor, heard about it. And watch this, and he didn't keep it to himself. Watch this, this is good. He didn't keep it to himself to see if it would happen, because he loved you. Also, he made sure that someone close to you found out. Watch this. See, some folk won't tell you who's trying to sabotage you. Because if you get sabotaged, it helps them. It's just getting too, it's right there in the text. And so Mordecai now has some points with the king, and you'll read about that in chapter 8. And so does Esther. So context is important. Mordecai, the man who raised Esther most of her life, is still helping her with life decisions. What does this say about Mordecai? Perhaps what does this say more about Esther? Do not allow titles, new opportunities, new levels of life to keep you from respecting those who have always been there for you. Just because you got new, those persons who helped raise you up, don't forget them as you go up. Esther could have allowed her new place in life to keep her from respecting those who have helped her make her life. Esther proves to be a person of integrity. And why does that matter? Integrity opens doors, but the lack of will close some doors. Esther does not devalue Mordecai's voice in her life. She's grown, she's queen, but she does not devalue Mordecai's voice. Now I've learned that some people will devalue your voice when they begin to think that your voice is no longer relevant or needed because they've arrived. You ain't even get that. There's some folk who think that once they go through the door that they think is the pinnacle of their life, They don't need to listen to you anymore because they arrived. Esther said, no, I still need Mordecai, and I'm listening to him. That is so good. I can really go beneath the surface with that. Got so many illustrations are flashing in my mind. Personal ones. Mordecai was Esther's adopted father, mentor, confidant, cheerleader, co-social activist for the people on behalf of the Jewish community. Esther and Mordecai have had a relationship for years, and as her time as queen begins to take more shape, the person who will hold her accountable will be Mordecai. Esther still allows Mordecai to hold her accountable. She's queen, but she still allows Mordecai to hold her accountable. Everybody needs somebody in their life to hold them accountable. Problem we have with so many persons this day, nobody wants accountability. Just let me do me. She allows Mordecai to hold her accountable. Let me add, another lesson that we learn from Esther is this. Number one, encourage others to hold you accountable. But also, and this is crucial, and Esther shares this, never make life decisions in emotional moments. You better get that one out. I'm giving y'all so much stuff for free today. Esther's story, many will call rags to riches story. She begins her life as an orphaned, adopted, and raised by her cousin Mordecai, and ends up the queen of Persia, although she's Jewish. That don't even make sense. Do you understand that? She begins her life as an orphan, adopted by her cousin Mordecai, and she ends up the queen of Persia, although she is Jewish. Esther, according to Mordecai, may have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Now, I got to move quick. As chapter 3 takes shape, there's a growing tension again, and I alluded to this earlier. There's a growing tension between Mordecai and a newly appointed official by the name of Haman. It's only 10 chapters in this book, so read these 10 chapters over the next couple days. There's a newly appointed official by the name of Haman. Say Haman. Haman has recently been made the highest ranking official or eunuch in Persia. As a result of his status, one of the perks that Haman now has or receives is that everyone will have to kneel down and pay honor to him when they enter his presence. There's a problem, however. Here's the problem. Everybody has to bow down when they get around Haman. But here's a problem, and I keep sharing this, lifting it. Haman is Jewish. Not everybody in town is Jewish, and not everybody in town is submissive or willing to compromise their beliefs. I'm going somewhere. So here's what happens. Mordecai has been hanging around the gates. He's always checking on Esther. Whenever Haman comes to the gate, those at the gate are supposed to bow down. Problem is, Mordecai, a Jewish citizen, refuses to bow down to Haman. Mordecai has convictions that he will not compromise. Mordecai trusts God to protect him. Mordecai is willing to be patient. Mordecai refuses to compromise his relationship with God. And Mordecai won't bow down to Haman. Now, let's look at this. Right here in chapter 3, it says, then the royal officials of the king gate asked Mordecai, why do you disobey the king's command? Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they snitched and told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated. For he had told them, watch this, he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, don't forget, he's learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews throughout the whole kingdom. Now, I got to move. Verse 7, Mordecai finds himself in a power struggle with Haman. He refuses to bow down, and the result is Haman becomes so angry that he persuades the king to not only kill Mordecai, but all Jewish persons. Now, real quick, I got 5 minutes. Look at verse 1, chapter 4. When Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. I'm in chapter 4. Keep going down chapter 4, because what you're going to find is that this story even gets even more deadly. Look at verse number 11, chapter 4. It says, all the king's officials, go back to verse number 9. They went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said and what Mordecai had done. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal province know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, Mordecai's asked her to go see the king. Anyone who reports to the king without being summoned, they will be put to death. She's at risk now, unless the king extends the gold scepter and spares their lives. But 30 days has passed as I was called to go to the king. Verse 12, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Here it is. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. God always has a ram in the bush. But you and your father's family will perish. You may not carry out the plan, and watch this, and you won't survive. But God's plan will prevail. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go gather together all the Jews and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, let me perish. Because I was placed in this position for such a time as this. Never think that your positioning is accidental. God places you where he needs you. Esther, when she first learns of Haman's plans, she seems to be accepting of what appears to be her lot. But then after listening intently to Mordecai, she makes the bold move to risk herself for the sake of the people. This unforgettable line is birthed. If I perish, let me perish. Now, I got to close, but here's how the story closes. You can read it for yourself if you don't believe me. She goes to the king, unannounced, taking a risk, because you're supposed to give the king notice. You had to be summoned, and then even if you're summoned, you don't approach the king unless he points his gold scepter at you. The text says she goes, he places her gold scepter at him. She enters his presence. She tells him what's going on, and the king, she says, King, listen to what's going on. I need your attention. I need you to pay attention to what I'm saying. She goes, has dinner with the king. Then she invites Haman to the dinner. Tells him this story about how Haman has really plotted to destroy the Jewish nation. There's more detail than that, but I don't have time to get into it. Long story short, Jewish nation is saved because Esther takes a risk. Sometimes you have to be willing to put you on the line and do what's right and trust that God will also honor you for trusting him. Honor comes when you trust God to do what God says he will do. I want you, when you read chapters 5 through 8, it gives you a story of how Esther saves the Jewish nation and Haman is destroyed. Mordecai is elevated. Turn to chapter 8 and I'll close right there. Just look at chapter 8 real quick. I guess verse number 1. Look at verse number 1. I'll go there. Cut and cross real quick. Chapter 8, verse 1. Yeah, here it is. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Look, then it says, Esther pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman, which he had devised against the Jews. The king extended the gold scepter to Esther and arose to still be before him. If it pleases the king, and if he regards me with favor, and if he thinks it's the right thing to do, and if he's pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman had put in place years ago. What was meant for evil, God will use in your favor. But here's the key. You got to trust God. You got to maintain your integrity. You got to do the right thing. Even though it seems like doing the right thing will put you at risk. This is Esther's story. Listen, read these 10 chapters over these next few days. Does Esther encourage you? Does Esther help you? Maintain your integrity and watch what God will do. I got to stop. I know I had to move fast with that. But these women, biblical antiquity, so much power, so much influence, and we don't perhaps give them the attention that they deserve. But without them, without Esther, what would have happened to the Jewish nation? Without her willing to take that risk, without her allowing herself to be held accountable, what would have happened? We have that old cliche, if God be for me, who in this world can be against me? We're going to take another look at another pivotal woman in history biblical history next week. Y'all enjoying talking about these women in biblical history? The stories are there. We've just got to bring more attention to them. Listen, I know I got to close. We're going to prepare to give right now. Let's prepare ourselves to give. Even as we're giving, don't forget, of course, leadership on Saturday. All of our leaders, make sure you're on hand. Let me put this. Don't forget, Saturday night. What happens Saturday night? Clocks go up. You know what that means, right? You get one less hour sleep. Don't come in here late Sunday morning. Set your clock up now. Some of y'all need to set your clock up now so you'll be on time. Wait a minute. On time is late, remember? Y'all watch the movie Drumline? On time is late. Be early. Do me a favor. This week, tomorrow, Lady Carla and I will celebrate 39 years of marriage tomorrow, 39 years. Celebrate. Applaud me for dealing with 39 years. Let me say it another way. Applaud her for dealing with me for 39 years. Oh, y'all stood on that. I don't know if I should be. Just let it go. 39 years, next year. Yeah, 39 years, 39 wonderful years. So thank you for that. Let's prepare ourselves to give, y'all. Let's give. Don't forget the prayer conference on the 18th. If you're using the online platforms, use those. You can use the envelope system, So much is happening this week. The Unplugged service on Saturday. Next weekend, the HBCU College Expo at Bowie State. How many of our youth are going to pray? Let me say this. If you have students, children in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, make sure you enroll them. Make sure you enroll them. All they have to do is come to the church, get on the bus and go. Students in 9th grade, 10th grade, even 8th grade if you want them to go that early. We have to start exposing them to opportunities and to our HBCUs. Listen, our prayers are with Elder Calvin Mitchell. His father's service will be this coming Saturday in Kensington, Pennsylvania at 11 o'clock, and also on this Friday. Also here at 10 o'clock will be the homegoing of Kayla Kelly, the daughter of Bishop Lisa Weir. Keep Lisa and her entire family in your prayers. Kayla's service will be this coming Friday at the 10 o'clock hour here in this sanctuary. Amen. Come on, let's all stand. Dealt with Hagar and Sarah last week. Dealt with Esther today. Throughout March, the month of March, dealing with women in biblical antiquity, their impact, their significance in the biblical narrative. I encourage you, read these. Esther only has 10 chapters. Read all 10 to get all the details of her story. She takes a risk, and God honors her. We're going to lift that song as we close out.
For such a time as this, I was placed upon the earth to hear the voice of God and do His will, whatever it is. For such a time as this, for now and all the days He gives, I am here, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this.
God, we thank you for your word, the power of your word, the value of your word. Allow us, God, to receive it and grow as a result of it. We honor you, God, for the Morning Star ministry and how you're using us to empower your community, strengthen your people. Give us, God, dedication and determination that we're able to honor you, able to magnify you. Keep us faithful, keep us connected, keep us in your word and your will. It's in the name of Jesus Christ we pray, and together we all say, amen.
For such a time as this, I was placed upon the earth to hear the voice of God and do His will, whatever it is. For such a time as this, for now and all the days He gives, I am here, I am here, I am His, for such a time as this. For such a time as this. For such a time.